When an avoidant pulls away, it can trigger feelings of anxiety. But in this video, we're going to talk about what gets them to come back around. So dismissive avoidants were conditioned in childhood to become very self-reliant. This is because their caregivers didn't respond appropriately to their emotional needs. It was common for them to experience emotional neglect, emotional minimization from one or more of their caregivers. So when the caregiver is emotionally distant, the child becomes accustomed to this, and they'll adopt that same emotional distance as they grow older. Now, this doesn't mean that they don't feel emotions. Of course, they still feel emotions, but they've learned to suppress those emotions, emotions of vulnerability, emotions of intimacy, and past relationships and traumatic experiences can play a role in this as well. So people with an avoidant attachment style, they've learned to become very self-reliant and emotionally independent, and they struggle to surrender some of that independence. And I refer to this as hyper-independence, because emotional independence is healthy. It's very healthy. It's a very healthy thing to have. But hyper-independence is an insecurity. People with a secure attachment style, they have emotional independence, but they also understand that they need to be willing to surrender some of that independence in order to form healthy relationships that can lead to emotional interdependence. But people with an avoidant attachment style, they struggle with this. They struggle to surrender some of that independence. So they have hyper-independence. And this is a big reason why they'll pull away from a relationship or from someone that they're seeing. Because if they fear that independence is being threatened, then they're going to pull away to protect themselves. And when they pull away, it can seem very abrupt, right? It can seem kind of out of the blue, like you didn't see it coming. And this is because they usually don't know how to communicate their needs. It just wasn't taught to them in their upbringing. And it's so much easier for them to just pull away, kind of just pull away without saying anything, without saying much. It might sound simple for them to just say, hey, listen, I need some space for myself to just process my emotions. I just need some time and space for myself so I can self-soothe. See, saying something like that can come rather difficult to them because, again, communicating your needs, it just isn't it's not in their attachment style. It's not in their language. So it's much easier for them to just pull away without saying much. That's why it can seem kind of abrupt or out of the blue. And if you're someone with an anxious attachment style, this can really bother you because it's going to trigger your fears. It's going to trigger your insecurities, and it's going to trigger your fear of abandonment. And your impulse is going to be to over pursue because you're going to feel like you're losing this person. So your impulse is going to be to save the relationship, to hold on tighter, and you're going to want to over pursue. But I'm telling you, don't do this because it's not going to get them to come back around. You over pursuing is only going to amplify their insecurities. It's only going to amplify their fears and their desire to pull away. So what gets them to come back around? Well, they need time for their fears to settle, for their fears to diminish. Because when they pull away, they're associating those fears with the relationship, right? They're not associating those fears with you. Again, these fears were developed back in childhood. But those fears were carried over into adulthood, and now they're associating those fears of abandonment, fears of intimacy, fears of commitment. They're associating those fears with the relationship. So they need time. They need time and space for those fears to settle before they can reconnect with you again. And what's going to happen is once those fears are settled, once they're diminished, they're going to be left over with their feelings. And once they're left over with just their feelings, they're going to come to miss you. And that's what gets them to come back around once those fears have diminished. Now, how did they pull away from you? Did they break up with you? Or did they kind of just become less and less responsive over time? Let me know in the comments because I know it's different for every relationship. But when they pull away from you, you have to give them that period of no contact, right? So I think a secure thing to do would be to provide reassurance without pressure. So remember that phrase, write it down if you have to. Reassurance without pressure. It can sound something like this. Hey, I notice you've been kind of distant lately, and I think I should give you some space. So take your time, and I'll be here whenever you're ready to talk again. See, that's a reassurance without pressuring them. And that's something you can say to them however you feel is appropriate. You can leave a voice message, you can text it to them, whatever you feel is appropriate for your relationship. But go ahead and give them that period of no contact. Give them that time and space so that they can self-soothe. Give them that time for their fears to diminish. And that period should really be for you too. Because now what's going to happen is you can take this time to consider your needs in a relationship, your emotional needs. And depending on how much, how frequent, and how long the avoidant pulls away for, you can consider if this relationship is a right fit for you. And maybe it is. Or maybe you need someone who's not going to pull away as much. So it's going to be different for every relationship, but you can use this time to consider your needs. But that's what gets them to come back around, right? Once their fears are settled, they need that time and space for those fears to diminish. Then they'll be left over with their feelings, and they're going to come to miss you. They're going to come to miss you, and that's what gets them to come back around. Once they've had that time and space for themselves, for those fears to diminish. So I hope I brought some good into your life today. If so, please like and subscribe. And please share your ideas and your stories and your experiences in the comments section. I love reading and responding to them. And if you think this video might help somebody, please share it with them. And if you want to know more about how you can support an avoidant when they pull away, I talk about that in this video right here. So give that a look. And until next time, you take care, and I'll see you in the next.